Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. In today's video, we're going to talk about something that we do because of a huge mistake that I made. What I usually try to do is help people understand how to reach financial independence. Sometimes that's through running a business and growing it to the point where someone else can run it for you, or investing in stocks until you can live off of your portfolio. Or my strategy has been investing in rental properties and having the passive cash flow from rental properties be larger than what my living expenses are. For most of us though, almost all, the path to financial independence is going to come from having a job. You either need to show consistent W-2 income to qualify for loans, you need to save up down payments, you need to save up reserves. If you're investing in stocks, you need to make the money to do that. If you're going to start a business, that's going to take capital. And what we're going to go over today is something that I learned while working at a truck driving school. I work at commercial driver school, and one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made was the mistake I made when I first started working at the school. I took the Marine Corps TAPS training. You know, when you get out of the military, they teach you how to find a job, do an interview, do a resume. I figured the military has never messed up and they must do everything perfect. So I took that training and then we were using it here at the school. It was a part of our curriculum because truck driving schools really aren't judged by getting somebody a CDL. What the school is judged on is by getting somebody a job. Generally, it should be a job better than what they were hoping for when they signed up for the school. And here's what we did wrong. Here's what the mistake was. This is a mistake that is still happening on basis. This is still happening at the places where counselors help people find jobs. What we did sounds smart. It seems like the right thing to do, but it was a mistake. We figured employers are going to be the ones who hire our graduates. So they do the interview, they write the paycheck, they make the job offer. So I went to the employers we work with, to the source. I went and talked to managers at Coke, Department of Natural Resources, Les Schwab Tires. And I wanted to talk to the managers that were working with us and hiring our graduates. And I thought, if I get the information from the source, then I'll know what to do. And it's really weird. Almost every manager we talk to, it's like they took the same HR class. To be a manager, it's like you have to hear a class that says, we want a chronological resume, we want you to explain gaps in employment, we want you to, like they listed off all of these things that the managers don't know, and we didn't know at the time. But every single thing the managers listed off is used to eliminate you. I pictured a manager sitting at a desk looking at resumes, like they pulled a stack of resumes down and they look through and they flip through until they find the best candidate. And there's no cop in the office with the manager at that starting point. So here's actually what's happening. They grab the stack of resumes. Let's say 30 resumes make it through the computer. If they pull down a stack of 30 resumes, if they're gonna call 5 people for interviews, they're gonna look at that stack and they have to throw away 25 people to get the stack down to the 5 that they're going to call for interviews. So the first thing they do is they look for who's too old, who's too young, who lives too far away. I've talked to managers who were looking at resumes, and hopefully you understand what a chronological resume is. Basically, it's a biography of everywhere you've worked with dates and times and job descriptions. But I've had a manager look at a resume and say, well, this person worked here for 6 months, here for a year, here for 6 months, so they're a job hopper, and there's no way we could take a risk on them. And those were military duty stations. So that's not a job hopper, that's somebody going where they're supposed to. And then I've had the same manager look at another resume and say, this person, well, she worked at this one company, she was there for 12 years. She worked at one company for 12 years. No initiative, no motivation, no drive, there's no way we would take a risk on her. So too many jobs was bad, not enough jobs was bad. And then if you had a gap in employment, it makes sense that you want to have a story to explain it. But if you put a gap in employment on your resume, it means the first thing the employer knows about you before they've even seen your face is something negative. We didn't know that this was the wrong question to ask. We were asking them what they wanted, and what a manager wants is what makes their job easy. Because if you've been a manager, you understand the hiring process is long. And at most companies, it's an interview, second interview, possibly a drug test, maybe a background check. At a fast company, it can be a couple of weeks. But not hiring somebody is 5 seconds. If you're the manager and you're looking at a stack of resumes, do you want to commit 2 weeks to each one or 5 seconds to each one to get that stack down as small as possible to get back to the rest of your work? So if you're a manager and you're looking at resumes and you see somebody graduated high school in 1920, you might not call them. But if you look at a resume and you see that somebody graduates high school in 2021, you might not call them either. Those are the extremes, but we're human and all of us have an idea of who's too old for a job or too young for a job. And while it's not legal to discriminate, it does happen. And at the truck driving school, we didn't realize we were asking the wrong question, so we followed directions. We were doing a chronological resume, we were explaining gaps in employment, we were putting the address on the resume, we were doing all of these things that the employers asked for, not realizing that we were hurting our clients. And I'm going to be completely transparent in this video. Truck driving schools can lie about their job placement. Over-the-road companies with a turnover rate of 130 or 150% will pretty much hire anybody. So truck driving schools can say they're at 100% job placement. But for us, for me, a real job is a local job. Our actual company tagline is "Be home every night." Local jobs just pay more. You don't have to leave your family for weeks at a time. So for me, a real job placement was how many of our clients were getting local driving jobs. And when we were asking the wrong question, our job placement rate used to be 60%. And 60% lets you be a vocational school in Washington State. It's actually ridiculous. There was an aerospace program in King County that ran a program for several years, and they consistently maintained a 20% job placement rate. And they were considered a success. So at 60%, the state thought we were doing pretty good, unless you can do math. That meant for every 10 students we trained, 4 were looking for work. That's a terrible statistic. I was with the school for about a year, and we accidentally asked the right question. We learned something about the hiring process that has absolutely nothing to do with driving, that stops giving employers a reason to throw you away, and it took our job placement rate for local work, not the over-the-road stuff, from 60% to over 96%. And for us, that is huge. Truck driving school is a word-of-mouth business. A lot of our clients come to the school because one of their friends went through and got a really good local driving job, so they think, if my friend did it, I can do it, so they come in. But we have to report our data. We have to show WorkSource what our job placement rate is because WIOA funds can pay for our training. We have to prove to the VA what our job placement rate is because there's the MyCAA program for military spouse training and the GI Bill. Any agency that can pay for our training, we have to prove in writing our job placement rates. And when we were at 60%, that is an acceptable number as long as you don't do the math. But when we jumped to 96%, people kind of freaked out. I actually had counselors call me and say, what the Fiji? What are you doing different? How's this possible? So what we're going over here today, I actually do this in 6 counties at our state's WorkSource. We do this on base with the Transition Center. We do it with the USO. We do it with a bunch of different agencies because what we learned has nothing to do with driving. It's just going to show you a way to make a resume. The first time might take an hour or so because it's a new concept. But once you've done this once, the perfect resume to get called in for any job that you want for the rest of your life, whether it's a new hire or working your way up in a company, the perfect resume will take you less than 10 minutes. Remember, it has nothing to do with driving. That's just where it came from. The first thing I want to cover is applicant tracking systems. I used to teach this class with a representative from Boeing at a WorkSource, and she would talk about her statistics from, I think it was 2016. In 2016, she would say that they had something like 2.8 million applications, and their applicant tracking system or a computer program would take that down to about 10,000 that their HR department would look at. 2.8 million applications, human beings got to look at 10,000. The applicant tracking system is used by a lot of different companies. Like Coke has a third-party applicant tracking system that you have to make it through before you can even make it to an interview with the company. And the idea is a computer program is going to check your application for mistakes. And since it's a computer program, it could be something big. Like if you misspell a word, it's going to scrub your application. So you think you've applied, but the company doesn't even know you exist, and you don't get a "thank you, that was a nice try" email. Your application's just gone. But since it's a computer program, it can actually be something really small. For instance, I live in Washington. That is capital W, capital A. If you do capital W, little a, you need a period. Mix that up, and it scrubs your whole application like you didn't even try. When I was explaining what we learned when we asked the right question to WorkSource counselors or SFL TAP counselors, and I was covering the first part about applications, they actually said, "Oh, we do this. We have a term for it." So if you've been through their training, you might actually recognize the first part of what I'm going to cover. There is a website where the applicant tracking system gets its data. And what you're going to do for applications is you're going to go to this website, and I'm going to have it up here in a minute, and you're going to look up every job you've ever had. If you were in the military, you're going to look up your MOSs, any billet you've ever filled. Military or civilian, you're going to look up any volunteer work you've ever done, and you're going to see what the computer says you did. And if you did that, what you're going to do is you're going to actually copy and paste that information into a master list. You're going to make this master list of everything the computer says you ever did. You're going to have to edit it to make it match you. Sometimes you're going to see a line that says something like, "You delivered livestock to multiple locations." Maybe you've delivered merchandise, auto parts, personnel, munitions, something that can make every line on there match your story. Sometimes you're actually going to look at this website and you're going to see a skill that the computer says was in one of your jobs, but you've never actually been paid to do it. Sometimes when we run into somebody with our nonprofit, we find somebody who's never actually had a job where they have to fuel a fleet vehicle. But pretty much everybody we encounter can put fuel in a vehicle. copy, paste. Sometimes on this website, you're going to look up and you're going to see a sentence that computer says you did in one of your jobs and you don't even know what it means and it's using terms you don't know. Leave that off because you have to actually explain every single line on your application. WorkSource and SFL Tap call this transferable skills, and I think they nail it 100% right. We all have transferable skills, and if you go to the website where the applicant tracking system is getting its data and you have that information on your application, you're going to make it through with no mistakes because you're using the computer's language, and then you're going to get a high score on their match system because you're actually using the words they're looking for. Here is what we learned when we asked the right question. I kept making the mistake of thinking that when you apply with a company sounds like a singular thing. But whenever you apply with a company, no matter the size of the company, if they have 10 staff or 150,000 staff, you're talking to two people. First is HR, human resources, black and white policy followers. They need I-9 proof that you can work in the United States. They need previous employer contact to verify your work history. They need your past. They're trying to prove who you are and that you can work there legally. All of that comes from the application. The hiring manager, the recruiter, the operations person who does the interview, makes the job offer, makes the actual decision to give you the job or the promotion, doesn't care about your past. What you did yesterday, what you did 6 months ago, none of that means anything. And try not to take offense at this. I've actually had recruiters tell me this, and more than one, so it must be something germane to the recruiting world. But I've had recruiters say, I don't care if somebody was a base commander, stay-at-home parent, or in prison. 10 years in the military or 10 years incarcerated is the same to a recruiter. You're coming from a different work environment, trying to reintegrate yourself into the civilian workforce, and veterans are proud of what we've done and usually want to talk about it, and somebody coming out of lockup maybe doesn't want to talk about it, and the recruiter doesn't care. The hiring manager is worried about what you are going to do, not what you used to do. They have a list of all the things that you're going to be doing next month, and they want to know how many of those things you already know that they don't have to teach you. And here's how we learned this. We were asking the wrong question. We asked employers what they wanted, and they gave us this list that made their job easy, and it helped eliminate our clients. Too many jobs? Bad. Not enough jobs? Bad. Gap in employment? Bad. Age? Bad. How far away you live? Bad. If you've never had the job you're applying for, let's say you're making a career change. We know that doesn't look great, right? What people don't understand is that if you have the job you are applying for, that's worse. We had a client come through our program and we placed him as the terminal manager for a Coke plant pretty close to one of our campuses. About 5 months later, another client went through our program with the CDL, went to interview with our graduate that was the terminal manager at the Coke plant. And to his Coke interview, this is a pretty done deal. Our graduate's running the place, our graduate's coming for the interview. To his Coke interview, our graduate brought a Mountain Dew, which is a Pepsi product. The person running the terminal called us and said, hey, that's great. He applied really well. In 6 months and a day, have him reapply because we can't talk to him for 6 months. There is competition between companies. Having the job you're applying for can be worse than never having had it before. If you're getting out of the military, do you know there's one MOS, one job specialty in the military that police departments don't like to hire? Military police. No offense if there's any watching, they'll take us infantry guys because they call us empty buckets. We don't know anything about law enforcement, so they can pour in what they want you to know. Instead of taking an MP and saying somehow, I need you to magically mind wipe yourself of all of your training and experience because what a cop can do inside the fence and what a cop can do out here is so different. Having the job that you are applying for can count against you. But we've been told to make sure that's on your resume. When I was getting out of the Marine Corps, they gave me a sentence in my TAPS training that actually cost me several jobs. It was the reason why I never even got called to the interview. And I still hear this sentence on post every now and then because it sounds smart, but this is stopping veterans from finding work. So, in the comments below, let me know if you've ever heard this sentence. The TAPS counselor was in a suit and I was young, so I figured he knew what he was doing, so I took this to heart. He said, take your military training and experience and translate it into something a civilian can understand. Okay, sounds smart. Anti-tank tow missileman. Someone told me the translation of, I can blow stuff up that's going to get me a civilian job. And things improve over time. That sentence has been shrunk all the way down to one word. There's one word service members are being told to use about themselves that costs them jobs, makes employers delete their resume. It's not retired. If you use retired, it doesn't make you sound like you're a 40-year-old person getting out of the military. It makes you sound like you're on Social Security. And it's not veteran. We know not to use veteran because that's associated with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injuries. This new word is new. And to a service member, it means one thing, but outside the fence, it screams a completely different thing. Hopefully you're understanding now, resumes are used to eliminate you. And here's what we learned when we asked the right question. For about 10 seconds, don't take any notes. When we go in and do this presentation, the counselors think we are giving the employer's perspective on resumes. They think we're teaching to a chronological resume, explain gaps in employment, give your address, translate your military skills and experience. They think we're doing all of that kind of stuff. We're not. What we're doing when we come in and do this presentation is teaching what we learned when we asked this question. Instead of asking a recruiter, what do you want on an application or a resume? I accidentally asked, can I look at the resumes of the people you hired? And that was the right question. If you're a manager, you know that there's a bunch of HR laws and they couldn't just hand out people's personal information. But a lot of managers are like me, slowly demoted down into their position and don't know the rules. So he handed me a stack of resumes. I looked at HR, IT, forklift. I looked at every position I could get my fingers on, everybody who was working, everyone who got the job, who got hired or got the promotion. Nobody, not one person did a chronological resume. Nobody explained gaps in employment. Nobody had their address on there. No one followed directions. Everybody who was hired, their resume said one thing, and then they stopped talking. Everything you say after this one thing will count against you. Too many jobs, not enough jobs, live too far away. Everything that we've been told to put on there is being counted against us except this one thing. And when I saw what this one thing was and how simple it was, I got a little bit frustrated. I thought somebody should tell us this when we're kids and you'll never need a resume class again in your life. I took what we learned when we asked this question one time to a counselor and explained, hey, I asked this question, I learned this about resumes, and I want to try this new tactic. The counselor looked at me, and we were friends. We'd been working together for a while, so it was okay. But she said, Dion, you are an idiot. That will never work. So we tried this at our school. Our job placement rate went from 60% to over 96%. And since then, she and I have co-facilitated this class a few times. And when she's setting it up, when she's telling the people what they're about to hear, she explains how they're about to learn something that she came up with. So when I thought of it, I was an idiot, but when it was proven, look at how smart she is. Which is totally fine. As long as people are getting the information, I don't care who gets the credit. Everybody's resume who got the job or got the promotion said this. They all said, I can do the job. Because the first thing that the recruiter does is looks for all the negatives, all the things that they can use to throw you away. And when they don't find them, what is the actual only thing that they look for that can count in your favor? Does it look like you can do the job? And it's really easy to say, I can do the job. To make the perfect resume to get called into the interview for any position that you want, whether it's a new position or a promotion, you're going to do the same thing that you did for applications. For applications, you went to this website, you looked up every job you've ever done, and you built a list of transferable skills, and then you edited them to match you. For resumes, it's this simple. All you have to do is go to the same website. But now, you're going to look up the position you are applying for. What you did yesterday means nothing. 6 months ago means nothing. Like I said, they've got a list of those 30 things you're going to be doing next month, and they want to know how many of them you already have now. The WorkSource and SFL TAP counselors get it 100% right. We all have transferable skills. But instead of looking at your past and saying from the jobs you've done, what can you market? I want you to look at the job you're applying for and look at all of those skills that the computer says that person has and see how many of them you already have. Because you probably have somewhere between 60 and 80% of them. So what you're going to do is build a master list of all of the skills that you have in the position you're applying for. My master list for transportation or management is somewhere between 8 and 10 pages of information. I would never give 8 pages of information on a resume to an employer. They wouldn't read it. They would laugh and throw it away. Unless I faxed it to them, they would get pissed and throw it away because I spent their money. What you're going to do is take your master list and make a copy for each job that you apply for, and then you're going to think of that company. And you're going to delete anything that they don't do. If you have something on your resume that that company doesn't do, that's not an extra, that will count against you. I've had 2 nephews and my son take our CDL program. I never told anybody they were my family members when they came through because I wanted them to have the same experience and opportunities as everybody else. And a trucking company refused to hire one of my nephews because on his resume he had a massage therapy certificate. The recruiter told me 2 reasons why they wouldn't hire him. The first one I thought was really stupid. The second one I thought was amazing. And it's actually been something we've been able to use to help a lot of our clients, and it dispelled a myth we were dealing with. The first reason the recruiter told me they wouldn't hire my nephew was, he said, Cisco is a trucking company. Massage therapy is way too touchy-feely for us. Like my nephew was going to be making deliveries and giving out massages. That was stupid. But the second thing he said, this was the one I thought was amazing. He said, that guy spent 11 months and $19,000 at Everest College getting a massage therapy certificate. There's no way I'm going to make him drive one of our trucks. Massage therapy was part-time. He was making $12 an hour. Cisco is a local driving job that starts out about $25 an hour. There was a reason why my nephew went through a school to get a CDL to get a better job. But that was too much thinking for the recruiter. Here is the myth that it dispels. There is no such thing as being overqualified for a position. A hiring manager's job is to hire the most qualified candidate. You can't be over the most. It might seem real when someone looks you in the face and says, I'm sorry, we can't hire you for this position because you're overqualified. A lot of times hiring managers will say that because you can't sue them. You can't take someone to court and say, that person complimented me. The truth is, people are other-qualified, not overqualified. If you say something on your application or your resume or bring up during your interview that makes them think you want to do something else, why would they waste your time with a job offer? Not too long ago, we did interviews for an office position at one of our campuses, and there was a resume that came in and we never even talked to this person because on her resume, she put 2 goals. If you're gonna have a goal on your resume, it should say, my goal is to work here. But her first goal, she probably won't get because of spelling. She said, I really wish to become a cooperate lawyer. And second, she said, I want to own an espresso stand. So her goals are to do none of the type of work that our office staff do. So why would we even contact them for an interview? How this only takes 10 minutes is what you do now is think of the next company you're applying at. Take your master that has all of the skills that you have in that field, make another copy, think of the new company, and delete everything that they don't do. What an HR director does at a hospital and what an HR director does at a municipality might be slightly different. I used to live out in a town called Yelm. I think it's the actual middle of nowhere. My daughter was 17 and she wanted to get a job as a cashier at a Dell's feed and farm store. Dell's has now become Tractor Supply. And it was bad timing for my daughter because in Yelm there was a SARS grocery store that had recently closed down. So my daughter's competition as a 17-year-old with no work history was a bunch of grown-ups with work experience as cashiers. I took my daughter to the website and we looked up what a cashier does. And she's missing a few key things. She can't say, I've had a job, I've been a cashier, I'm 10-key certified. But she was 17, in high school, and human. We found 4 pages of transferable skills. She can keep a clean workstation, she can issue a receipt, she can listen to a customer, resolve their complaint or issue. It was like all of these cashier skills that she can do. And 4 pages is way too much information. So we whittled her resume down to 2 and she turned it in, she applied, she was interviewed, she got hired. Think about what I just said. A 17-year-old who's never worked a job had to whittle her resume down to what she could turn in. I waited a few months because I didn't want to go in right away and be one of those helicopter parents just kind of hovering around. But a few months later, I went in and I asked Derek, who was running the store. I said, Derek, I'm curious. When she was interviewed for the position, there was a bunch of other people here. Why did you pick her? Derek said, actually, it was super easy. I looked at her resume and she had everything on there that we do. I haven't had to train her hardly at all. She's doing great. Then Derek blew my mind. He said, I got an application in from somebody who had 5 years of cashier experience at SARS grocery store, and there's no way I could take them. He said, SARS is a grocery store, and Dell's is hay and feed and propane, and that person would have been lost here. And this was before the time of masks, so I was really glad I was able to keep a straight face, because I didn't want to laugh at my daughter's boss. But on the way home, I was thinking, you had a cashier applying to be a cashier, and you had my daughter, who at the time had never had a job, had never taken out the trash or done the dishes. I think this was the laziest teenager on the planet. She's turned into an amazing woman, but at the time she was a pretty lazy teenager. And he hired her because her resume talked about the position. The other person's resume talked about their past, and that's what cost them the position. And now I actually want to share with you how powerful this strategy is, but please keep this between us as I put this on YouTube. When I first started working at commercial driver school, I was a part-time night instructor. I've been a Marine, a cop, and a truck driver. There was really nothing in my past that qualified me to teach people anything. I felt really lucky getting hired and put through a train the trainer program and learning how to facilitate and present information in a way that it's retainable and the different learning styles. And now I get to take all my years of driving and I get to put that in somebody's hands. I get to physically give away a career every day that I come to work. So to me, this is the coolest job I've ever had. But then I learned this system. So every time a new position came out at the school, I didn't put in a resume that says, hey, I'm the part-time night guy. Can you give me a shot at being the lead? There's no confidence there. You wouldn't hire or promote that person. I went to the website and I looked up what instructors do. And I built a resume that said, as a lead instructor, here's my skill set. As an operations manager, I can do this for you. As a school director, I bring this to the table. As a president of... So right now, I'm the president of all 4 locations. And when I took the position, I had no clue what I was doing. Most of us need to get a position and then learn how to do it. I knew the interview questions. I knew one of them was going to be, do you have a working knowledge of a profit and loss system? And I was honestly able to say yes, because I watched a YouTube video for like 20 minutes. And someday I'm probably going to tell the owners of this company that in the beginning I really didn't know what I was doing. But not today. But here's what's going on in the mind of a person hiring you to take a new position or take a promotion. They have a set of skills that you need. You need to be at this level so you can just go do the job. You don't need job shadowed, you don't need babysat, you don't need more training, you can just go to work. If your resume talks about everything that you used to do, they're going to have to train you all the way up to what you need, which takes a lot of time and a lot of money. And with so much to learn, you might be a part of their turnover rate, which is expensive. But if your resume talks about the position, every single skill that you talk about or point out is something they don't have to teach you. You're going to save them time, you're going to save them money. There might be some last little bit that you need training, some policy or procedure that you don't know yet, but training you a little bit is a lot less time and money and makes you look a lot more attractive. If any of you are old enough to remember, we used to have these things called dictionaries. It was a book you had to open and read. You couldn't just talk to your phone to find out what things meant. But before you clicked on this video today, the definition of a resume used to be your past on paper. And what I'm telling you now, what we learned, is your application is about your past and your resume is about your future. When we learned that, that is what took us from 60% job placement to over 96% job placement. And that doesn't mean our best candidates. That's people who came through with DUIs and felonies, or worse, being a veteran, things that get discriminated against all the time. And it doesn't only work for a company that has an applicant tracking system. If a company has an applicant tracking system, using this system will get you through with no mistakes and then get you a high match because you're using the computer's language to beat the computer. If you go and apply at a company that doesn't have an applicant tracking system and the hiring manager sees you show up with this language on your resume, they're going to think you know the position better than they do, which is what they're hoping for when they're screening for a position. Here is the website, and if you've been through WorkSource or SFL TAP or GPS or any kind of training on doing resumes or applications or applying for a job, you have probably been to this website, onetonline.org. onetonline.org. There is decades worth of super smart people's information on this website that you can use to confuse yourself. So we're going to use the KISS principle. Keep it simple. Up here in this upper right hand corner, this is a quick search. For applications, you're going to click on here and you're going to put in every position you've ever worked. For resumes, you're going to click in the same spot and put in the position you are applying for. I'm going to use customer service as an example because I haven't found a position yet that doesn't involve customer service. If you are applying for a customer service position, pretty much your entire resume is going to be customer service. The rest of us, we need at least a section for customer service. When I click on customer service, these are the jobs that pop up. The very top one, customer service representative, matches my search 100%. The further down you get, the less it's going to match. So if you put in there operations manager, it's going to say operations manager, shift supervisor. If you put in local city driver, it's going to say local driver, regional driver, dump truck driver, lift driver. So you're going to want to click on the top few. And when I click here on customer service representatives, it takes me to this page. What I'm about to say is how the applicant tracking systems work. The applicant tracking system gets its data from this, the details tab. This is where the job posting comes from. This is where the job description comes from. These are the actual words that the computer is scanning for when it looks at your application and resume. And when we got those resumes and applications in for our office staff, that was a customer service position. And almost everybody who applies for a customer service position had this sentence on their resume. Like, this is customer service language. Each one of those had a sentence something like, the numbers might have been different, but the structure was the same. They said, I've worked in retail for 5 years and improved customer satisfaction by 20%. That sentence would make it through an applicant tracking system without any mistakes, but then it would get a score of 0. The computer doesn't know what 5 years is, and I wouldn't know how you quantify 20% of customer satisfaction. That's not a thing. Every single company out there would have a different metric for doing that. This is what the computer is scanning for. Confer with customers by telephone or in person to provide information about products or services, take or enter orders, cancel accounts, or obtain details of complaints. That sentence says, I'm human, I can speak in computer language. There are so many things that you know how to do for the position you're applying for, but how does the computer say it? It is that simple, kindergarten simple. Go to the source, get the information they're looking for, have that information on your resume. So from top to bottom on your resume, you're going to have your name at the top, then you're going to have your contact information, which is your phone number and your email, and no address. An address on a resume can only count against you. If you live in an apartment, that is temporary. If you live in the rich part of town, maybe they don't think they pay enough. Poor part of town, they don't want to be associated with it. On or near a base, they might assume that you're a military spouse that has a shelf life for a certain number of years before you move away, or that you're going to re-enlist or be in the Guard or the Reserves. Or your address could just be far enough away that they think you live too far to commute. Even if you've been commuting farther, you're not there in person to say, this is shorter than I was driving and I would love to work here, because at this point in time, remember, you're just a piece of paper that they're trying to get rid of. You're not a human being yet. Next, you're going to make sure your contact info is at the top of every page. You never staple a resume. If you staple a resume, they're going to hold it upside down. They're not even going to read your name and they're going to throw it away. If you've seen the movie Office Space, you know that those machines jam super easy. And even if they take the staple out, now that corner is crinkly and it's going to jam. So you make sure that every page has your contact info on it in case they get separated, they know who that second page belongs to. A lot of people who teach resumes will tell you to put a professional summary, and you're totally welcome to do that if you want to. And they usually recommend not having an objective. And that's because a lot of the employers that we work with have received resumes that had an objective that looks like somebody Googled, copied, and pasted their resume objective. It sounds something like, I am looking for a position with potential for advancement that can utilize my skills and abilities, and I want to be a team player. But that doesn't tell the employer what you want to do. A lot of companies have multiple positions open. So what's been most effective for us is you can have your professional summary, but have an objective that is super short. Name the position, name the company. You want to name the position, and if it's a big enough company, make sure that your actual objective is their job number order. And then you want to name the company because you don't want a company thinking that you're just looking for a job. Because if you're just looking for a job, you might leave for the first company that offers you $1 an hour more. You don't want them thinking that you have 10 resumes in your car and you're going to 10 different companies and just giving them a resume hoping somebody will pick you up. You have 10 resumes in your car, but each one has the name of the position and then the name of the company so that they think you want to work there. Then, just make sure you give them the right one. The next section of your resume is the top half. This is the information where you're going to put in the skills for the position you're wanting. This is the most important section if it makes it into a human being's hands. If they don't see their requirements in this top half, they're not going to look at the bottom half or the second page. So make sure that the most important things to the position that are listed in the job description are listed here in this top half. If it goes through an applicant tracking system, here's how you're going to get your 5 seconds. And if I do this presentation live, I usually apologize in advance, but I will be able to edit it out for this video. Normally, when I'm doing this presentation with the Boeing representative, she facilitates this part. And she gets really angry. She starts talking really fast, her neck gets all tight, and she cusses a lot. I don't cuss, but when I do this part of the presentation, for some reason my brain goes into mimic mode and I talk from her perspective. When you apply at Boeing, your resume is going to be squished into a column so that on one computer screen, our representatives can see your resume and our job description side by side. And we use a double-blind system, so we're not allowed to see your name or the name of the position that you're screening for. So there's no way that we can hire or promote our friends or family. If the first thing in our job description says that we require a high school diploma and you have a bachelor's degree, we just deleted you. The applicant tracking system can't make a logic leap, and a bachelor's wouldn't tell us that you went to high school. A master's degree wouldn't tell us that you went to high school. And if the second thing on our job description says that we require that you have the ability to lift 30 pounds and you can lift 100 pounds? We just deleted you again. Now, here's where she starts to get frustrated. She would say, we're deleting you because you are a better candidate than what we're looking for. And remember these 3 words, better is different. If we require a high school diploma and you have a bachelor's degree, that means you have a high school diploma and a bachelor's degree. If we require that you have the ability to lift 30 pounds and you can lift 100, that means you can lift 30 or more pounds. You need to match the language that we're looking for, and the language that we're looking for comes from the website. And at this point, she really tears into the veterans. She calls herself an army brat and says her goal is to hire veterans, and here's why she can't. Veterans will turn in what she calls the SFL TAP special. And one of the top lines is going to be the number of troops that you supervised. Are we screening for that? No, so it's a blank spot. We don't even get to see it. Then you're going to list your duty stations. And if you've been to anywhere that sounds like Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait, or anywhere where there's just dirt, we're going to assume that in your welcome basket you were issued post-traumatic stress or a traumatic brain injury. It just comes from being in country. And then at the bottom of your resume, veterans put in actual insult to Boeing that they think was a good thing. Veterans submit resumes that point out the dollar value of the equipment that they were responsible for, thinking that this makes them sound responsible. But a veteran is coming from an industry that is designed to spend taxpayer money, trying to get a job at a company like Boeing, where if we don't show a profit, we have to fire people. And the veteran is bragging about being a part of government waste. At this point, she says, if you're a veteran or not a veteran and you want to get a job at a company like hers, what you need to do is grab a box of crayons and your kids, and in crayon, write out a resume that says, this is my name, I want this job, these are the skills that match that job that you get from the website, and then stop talking. And if you go down a little bit further here to this section that says customer service, this is the part that a lot of people forget. Yes, if you apply for a customer service position, I said earlier, your entire resume should be about customer service. But the rest of us need at least a section. I haven't found a job that exists yet that doesn't involve some form of customer service. Even if a person gets into IT because they'd rather work with computers than people, an IT help desk is still going to be helping your coworkers. And I should probably find a better way to say this, but it's generally not true working with our nonprofit or with the truck driving school, because I usually encounter people who are trying to make their lives better. But I got my commercial driver's license because I can't stand people. I think people suck, and driving is amazing. I'm in a truck by myself, getting paid to listen to an audiobook. I make like a 20-minute delivery at a store with a helper clerk, and they think we're friends because I'm not there long enough to hate their guts. And then I get back in my truck. Let's say I messed up on my route, made a huge mistake. When I get back at the end of the day, there is a Post-it note on my driver's box that says, don't do that. That is my human interaction with management. This is like the dream job for me. But if I put anything that I just said on a resume, I would never get called for an interview. I would never get called to be offered a job. If a veteran found my resume, they might call me and say, hey, did you know you can go out to American Lake and talk to somebody and get some help? But they're not going to call me to offer me a job. You don't have to say that you're the most amazing salesperson who improved customer satisfaction by whatever that even means. But have a couple lines. Let the hiring manager know that you're going to work with coworkers, compliance. In transportation, you have law enforcement at the scale. Most of us might not be sales people, but we're still going to interact with the customer on some level. The next section that I have down here is education. And there's 2 things when it comes to education. Try not to be offended by the first one, but first, only list education that's relevant. If you're applying for a position that doesn't require a degree and you have a degree, that's not an extra. That makes you other qualified. That hiring manager might think that you got that degree because you want to work in that industry or that field or in a position that requires that degree, and the position you're applying for doesn't need it. So they'll pass you up for someone else. And second, no dates. If you graduated high school in 19 anything, we're too old. And if you graduated high school in 2000 anything, you're too young. There is no right age to be when it's just on a resume. This is a piece of paper that they're still trying to get rid of. So you don't want anything on your resume that ages you. If there are any veterans, the next line down, you're going to put your number of years of service with no dates. And if you have more than 10 years of active duty, or if anybody has more than 10 years of experience doing anything, that means you have 10 plus years. There is no number bigger than 10 on a resume. It might be 10 plus 12, but that is still factually 10 plus years. You don't want to put 22 years of experience on a resume because the person looking at the resume might be 22. And that means that when they were born, you were already a grown-up working, and so is grandpa. So the age bracket that you get put into is pretty far out there. But you have 10 plus years active duty honorable discharge. And towards the beginning of this video, I talked about that sentence that is costing veterans jobs, translating your military skills and experience into something a civilian can understand. And I said that that's been improved over time and reduced all the way down to one word. Veterans know not to use the word retired because it makes you sound old, and they know not to use the term veteran because of what it's associated with. There's a new term that veterans are being told to use about themselves, and it's making employers delete their resume. When you're getting out of the military, service members are being told to call themselves a transitioning service member. To a veteran, that means the point in time that I got out of the military. To a civilian, that word screams at the top of your lungs, massive midlife crisis. You don't know where you're going, what you want to do. You need an employer to grab you by the hand and walk you down the aisle to a job. They don't want to do that. Employers want the warm and fuzzy of hiring somebody who used to be in the military, but they don't want somebody who just got out or is possibly still in mentally. So I've had some service members ask me, if I can't call myself a veteran or retired or transitioning, what do I call myself? Ready? Nothing. People don't make a resume that says, graduating college student looking for work. They have a resume that says, human being, have degree, want job. You are, as a veteran, human being, want this job, used to be in the military. And the last thing down here at the bottom are your references. I've heard a lot of people say put references available upon request because it makes you sound smart. It's the only time in your entire life you use the word upon. It doesn't go anywhere else. We recommend listing references. Just put 3 of them because if the employer needs them, they're there. And if they don't need them, they don't care that they're there. We have a lot of the employers that we work with through our nonprofit or through commercial driver school where the employers reach out to references before they've even talked to the person. They don't want to talk to the person until it's time to set up the interview because if you talk to a person, you give them hope. You make them think there's movement on the hiring process and you turn them into the squeaky wheel. Sometimes employers need to verify references for 2 things. 1, they want to make sure you know somebody so you're not a hermit. And 2, they want to make sure somebody knows you so you don't work for ISIS. Once they verify those 2 things, then they'll contact you to set up that interview. So it's been most effective for us to just list 3 references. From top to bottom, a resume is, here's my name, I want this job, these are the skills that match that job. Try to stop talking. The really cool thing with resumes is that if there were 5 people here today doing this presentation, that would be about 34 opinions on what a resume should look like. I'm not saying that the way we do it is the only way. What I'm saying is that what I went over today has been the most effective for us helping our graduates find jobs and all of the people that we work with through our nonprofit find jobs, based on years of feedback from employers. And if you're curious to know why I run a nonprofit, I'm going to leave a link to a video at the end of today's video that explains that. To me, one of the coolest things that I get to do is help with job placement assistance. I really hope I made it worth your time logging into this video today. If you're not looking for a job or trying to work your way up at the company you're at, you might know somebody who does need a job or could use a better one. Please share this video with them and hopefully they can get something out of it. Until the next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.